Boom, we're recording. Boom. Wow, that's pretty loud. Welcome to the Australian Poetry Hall of Fame. I'm Thundercloud. Mum calls me James. I'm washing away the garbage, living rainbows after rains. There was a bit of rain today, wasn't there?
Yes.
Yeah. Sometimes my mum used to call me shit for brains.
Oh dear.
Yeah, I know, but that's just as a joke. Yeah, anyway. Now you know, it's not always James. Hey, well, welcome to Wednesday Words on this 8th of February. Let's begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we broadcast the Kamilaroi, the band by people, and acknowledge the continuing connection to the land of the elders past, present and emerging, and acknowledge that sovereignty has never been ceded. And big up to Lydia Thorpe for saying to the Greens and speaking her mind and not being constrained by party politics. I know what it's like because I did stand for pre-selection for the Greens. On that political note, that's enough of my opinion. No one wants to smell my backside.
I thought it was a Brian's one.
Look, I've got some new portraits here for the Hall of Fame. We've also got we've got a special guest poet tonight, Alex Dudley. He's an ecologist and he's written 2 books called Faunaverse. They're children's poetry, but from an ecologist perspective, so they're actually factual and they're entertaining as well. So he's here for us. Wow. Welcome Skye, Saul. Gladys, welcome back. Ashley, Gabriel, and I believe Vincent's going to drop in soon too. Big thank you to Chrissy from Ballarat who has sent, and her sister Julie from Canberra who sent us 18 poetry books. And storybooks, and if you check out Chillin' Tuesday's episode last night, Skye, Thundercloud and Skye. Doesn't that sound good, eh? Yeah, but it sounded Thundercloud and Rose. That's kind of sounded like bike-ish too, or something. I don't know. You know, like Harley and Rose, you know, I don't know. Anyway, hippie-ish, I'm not too sure. But anyway, we've got Douglas Stewart, James Macaulay and Nancy Keesing. Now these are 20th century poets, particularly Douglas Stewart and Nancy Keesing. Not only were they great poets, but they compiled a lot of anthologies of poetry and celebrated many of our Australian poets. So I've got Nancy Keesing's book here, Showground Sketchbook, which was published in, and I should have checked this out earlier, it's published by Angus and Robertson, and yeah, I would like to say, wow, Angus and Robertson, what an awesome publishing company for publishing so much Australian poetry. Yeah, this was published in 1968, so it's 2 years older than me. It's 55 years old, this book. All right, we're going to start today. I'll just read 2 of her poems and then I'll do one of my own, and then I'll ask Alex to come up and as our guest poet, and also possibly invite him back at the end. This one's from Nancy Keesing. It's called Children. Long scorched. Let's start that again. Children. Long summer scorched. My surfing children catch random waves or thump in dumpers, whirling, gasping, tossed, disjointed. I watch, fear they may be broken, that all these foaming limbs will never reassemble whole together, all under such a peaceful sky, all under such another sky. The pictures show some village children, caught at random, tossed, exploded, torn, disjointed, like sticks broken, whose sagging, scorched limbs will never reassemble whole together. That's sad. Hello, Vincent, welcome.
Howdy.
The next one I'm going to read is bread.
Good, thank you.
Bread. I make man's ancient food that at blood's temperature gathered its own life, began to seed and stir. I plunge my fists within the resilient dough for bread, the living, leaven, stiff, fragrant and moist to knead. Take shape now from my hand, its warmth of growing yeast springs from the palm, pressed in and curls back to resist my artistic hands. Find an old skill to throw and press and curve and turn and shape the living dough. I set the bread to rise and hear the smallest sound beneath the muslin cloth that covers it around. It's the sound of life from dough that's warmed the hand and took blood heat to grow. I shape the loaves, they stand again to rise before they're baking into food. Bread that is symbol of plain goodness, life and God. All generations of women who ground flour for bread and set it by their ovens and curved strong hands to knead, how intimately they knew whence man's true symbols come, the seed, the yeast, the bread, the child swelling in the womb. Yes.
Did you make that up?
No, this is Nancy Keesing, mate. But
Spaghetti?
yeah, so her, so that's
well.
but yeah, no, like as you know, I make the bread here and
know,
I
that's
do
what I
that
was
by
thinking.
hand and I knead it by hand.
Yeah,
And I,
it's a bit like you too.
That's what I was thinking.
that's why I got into it. I could just
Yeah.
we could imagine just doing that. I said, oh yeah, let's put some actions with this. Yeah.
Yes.
So there, that was lovely.
And I could have imagined you having written that. It's got your ambience.
That's
Yeah.
what I thought, actually.
Yeah,
I didn't think
got
of
my
that.
scripture.
But I could. But
Bread.
I
Of
can't.
course you can. You just,
All right,
you
now.
just spit them out.
There's no secret that I am a spokesperson, proponent of ending prohibition of drugs in favour of helping people medically instead of punishing them. A harm minimisation model. In fact, I've written this book, Poetry to End Prohibition, the 4/20/2020 edition, and that's from my experiences there, living 2.5 years in Nimbin, seeing all kinds of things happen due to what is it? Fear of truth. There's a concept for you. Fear of truth. Have you ever thought about that? Totally? Well, because it's what happens when you're doing something that is prohibited. You can't get help for it. You can't admit that you have a problem. And this is what happens, and then you've got this thing that, if you do that thing, you're a bad person, you end up in prison. So you've got all of this judgment heaped on people who have dysfunctional, repetitive patterns of behaviour. That's called addiction. And the antidote is connection. And people get addicted to things when they're lacking connection. Whether it's food, alcohol, cigarettes, it's whatever, they're suddenly feeling nervous, anxious, so let's reach for a whatever. A chocolate, a cigarette, a bong, a mush, whatever. Anyway, in Nimbin, it's part of the greater Bundjalung Nation. There's the Widjabul Waibu people and all those people there, originally the 18 tribes of the Bundjalung language group. And Their languages differ slightly within different tribes, of course, but there are some general words. And one of them is, and I'm going to explain them at the beginning because they're in this. And this poem is called "This Is the Sign You're Looking For," Gurrama. And then there's "This Is the Sign You're Looking For," Part 2, Shane the Cannabis Dealer. And this is written sitting in the street in what's called the Blister, where the Rainbow Cafe used to be, and watching the stuff going past. So back to these Bundjalung words. First of all, in Bundjalung, they only have 2 pronouns. They don't have he or her, so they don't have all of this what's your pronoun bullshit. And so they have nulli and nullanga. Nulli means we. That's it. There's no I, so it's very egoless. There's also nullanga, which, as an ecologist and as an environmental scientist that I am, I really relate to. Nullanga means we, all of us together, the plants, the animals, the air, the planet, the universe. We, all of us together. So you could even call it, you know, might even want to name it in the English word God. But all of nullanga. And then from that, there's the concept of gurrama. And the concept of gurrama is, it's kind of like a compassionate love. It's a sort of, actually what it means to care for, to respect, to have no judgment, and to have no jealousy. So it's egoless, because there's no judgment. And then from this word gurrama comes the having of gurrama, the good, bugul, and the not having of gurrama, mugul. So if someone's going crazy, you know, angry or losing their shit or they're being mugul. And bugul, and when you meet someone, it's bugul bay, or how are you, bugul bay, good, thank you, bugul bay. So it's a very common thing. But this gurrama, so nullanga, gurrama, we, all of us together, care for, respect, have no judgment, have no jealousy. Super powerful concept. Hopefully we can change the world with it. That's why First Nations wisdom is so important. This is the sign you're looking for. I was sitting at a table, so I might sit at the table as I was writing this. A chattering woman says, "Chemtrails in the sky!" An uncle, a crow, a friend walking by, a grandma with children, a man and woman from Rome, a boy selling medicine, 2 dogs meet at home, a traveller walking, Tony saying, "Hello, medical cannabis heals, you know. I'm sitting here watching the world going round." Uncle Gilbert said to a friend he called just now, "Bang from the beer truck, poison for poor Nullanga Gurrama brings us together for sure. It means care and respect and no jealousy and having no judgment for you or me. This is the sign you're looking for." Part 2, Shane the Cannabis Dealer. Out and about in Nimbin town, the bully boys are walking around locking up the herbal healer, locking up Shane the Cannabis Dealer. What can he do? It's so unfair, the bully boys just don't care, persecuting cannabis dealing while alcohol does harm, not healing the government. Want your money to tax the sick, they think it's funny, when cannabis is just a herb. Taxes, licences are absurd. Cannabis must be free to grow and juice and heal me. I stand here in my defiance, shouting about the Plant Freedom Alliance. The war on drugs is going down. The bully boys in Nimbin town, they're searching for the herbal healer. They've locked up Shane the Cannabis Dealer. What else can he do? he can't read, so he sells the medicinal cannabis you need. While alcohol harms right across the land, the government's deceptions grand, the pharmaceuticals want your money, they poison you and think it's fun. To control plants is kind of strange when plants, animals and humans are free range. Free the herbs for you and me, medicinal plants must be free to help with wellness and self-reliance. I used to grow herbs in my defiance. I had to change that. Crime gangs profit from the drug war policy, men exploit the poor, the drug war's pure discrimination. Punitive justice right across the nation. The corporate prison industrial drug warring targets young men, the black, the poor, punishing your healing, so drugs they sell, making profits by making life hell. There is a solution called harm minimise, where people can grow and herbs legalise and be a health boost for the cannabis user, and we could rehab all the hard drug abusers. If you legalise drugs, you end the black money. The pharmaceutical crime gangs don't think that's funny, because legalising herb means their profits are lower. You could grow your own medicine as a cannabis grower. Drug gangs will disappear if we end the drug war and we stop locking up the young men and black and the poor, and if we end the drug war, well, we'll help out the healer, and the cops wouldn't lock up Shane, the cannabis dealer. That kind of makes me quite sad, that. But what was fantastic news last week, and it's only the first step, and this came from Mind Medicine Australia, the premier group advocating for the legalisation and the use of psychedelics for PTSD, anxiety, all that kind of stuff. So last week, yes, the Therapeutic Goods Association moved MDMA and psilocybin magic mushrooms from Schedule 9 illegal to Schedule 8, which means now, because there's been enough research done, means that now a psychologist or a psychiatrist can prescribe it in certain cases, which is fantastic because they are both fantastic medicines for many, many people, and hopefully this is just the beginning of bigger and better things, yeah. All right, well, I am going to invite our special guest, our ecologist, poet. Look, someone once called me the hippie Dr. Seuss, but I reckon this isn't. It's a hippie Dr. Seuss, hey?
Yes.
That's
the whole pharmaceutical industry health thing is of great interest to me. My wife suffered from bipolar disorder for most of adult life. Severely mentally ill. She had bipolar 1. She was in and out of psych wards for, well, many years, including the psychosis, the suicidality. And anyone who knows anyone with bipolar disorder will know it's no walk in the park at all. Fortunately, I've got a bit of a weird mind, and we cured it. She's been off all medications and symptom-free for going on 6 years now. And I do in this case actually have to give thanks to the psychiatrist. Now, she was on a huge range of medications for a long time. They kept her alive. They didn't really give her any quality of life, but they did actually stop her from killing herself. But it turns out that bipolar, at least in her case, and in the case of quite a number of other people it seems to turn out, is actually a gut issue, not a brain issue. And one of the reasons for her depression was she wasn't producing serotonin or dopamine in the gut, so nothing would bring her joy. Anyway, I approached it from a bizarre angle, and I read a bit of research on the gut microbiome, and we ended up doing 2 transplants. And now that's sort of like in a bit in the mainstream, but back in 2016 we were definitely the first people to try that for mental illness. So I regard myself as a scientist, but I think that a lot of scientists tend to be very, very narrow in their approach, especially in the medicinal fields. The gastroenterologists never talk to the psychiatric community, and so there was this opportunity that was missed for far too long, in my opinion. And hundreds of thousands of people have taken their own lives because it's mental illness, and that is a great tragedy. But anyway, it just shows you that occasionally looking from outside of the box can create miraculous results. I'll start today. I mean, I've got poems on all sorts of weird and wonderful stuff. I'll just tell you about a bull ant to start off with. I'm sure some of you have had encounters with bull ants over the years, especially if you live around here. I'm a proud soldier, defender of the Queen. If someone threatens my domain, I get pretty mean. I pride myself on tactics. I don't leave things to chance. I'm the ant that got inside a trucker's underpants. He squatted down beside the nest to change a punctured tyre, so I ran up his trouser leg, set his nuts on fire. He jumped up most hastily, forgot about the truck, and jumped about disrobing, yelling, "Goodness me," and "Damn." And now I'm a hero. I'm fated north and south. I only wish that I could get the taste out of my mouth. So the truth about bull ants is they're pretty much all females. All the workers you see, they're kind of like sexless females. But they're still very great warriors, without a doubt. Some of you might have heard who's heard my poetry before?
Me?
Yeah, all right, well, you don't mind if I...
No, you do what you
repeat?
do.
Okay. So, in a past life, I worked as a discovery ranger down in Tasmania, and I worked at Cradle Mountain for a long time. And Cradle Mountain is absolutely riddled with wombats. But most of the tourists are strictly diurnal. They go out in the middle of the day, whereas most of the wildlife comes out at night. And so the tourists often don't see the wombats, but they see the things that they leave behind. And so I was constantly being questioned about what leaves these cubic droppings on logs and rocks. And so I came up with this explanation. I trekked amongst the rounded hills and walked through mutton grass. Scenery surrounded me, and many peaks I passed. I stopped a while to rest my bones upon a fallen tree, and as I checked the ground around, a strange sight did I see. Upon a log beside my foot, a puzzling sculpture stood, 5 green cubes of fibrous content balanced on the wood. What strange beast had passed this way and left these decorations? A nearby ripping, crunching noise disturbed my ruminations. I turned about with trembling heart, not knowing what I'd see, and there I saw a wombat looking quizzically at me. It looked a friendly creature. Its eyes were small and bright. "Hello there," the wombat said. I nearly died of fright. I wasn't too familiar with marsupials that spoke. I always thought the wombats were a silent sort of folk. "Those droppings there," I pointed. "To what do they belong?" "Those? They're mine," the wombat said. "I haven't been there long." "But why are they stacked up like that? Why plonk them on a log? It seems a lot of effort to spend going to the bog." Finally, the wombat spoke. "I guess that you should know more than nature's gentle urgings determine where we go. That artifice, that sculpture, that well-constructed pile identifies this place as mine with its distinctive style. The size of each cube segment and their placement tells a story. Any wombat seeing this knows they're in my territory." "I said, "I understand your message etched in feces, but does that sculpted scat apply to any other species?" "Don't worry, mate," the wombat said. "You're not a threat to me. I'll see you around. I'm off to get some sedges for my tea." With that, the wombat trundled off, left me to contemplate. Round objects roll, but cube ones don't. not in their natural state. Next time you see those cube-shaped droppings, don't sneer with derision. They're the fecal art of wombats, deposits of precision. So, I'll read something a little bit different this time. This is hopefully a slightly, philosophical poem. It's called Nothing Bad Will Happen. No shades of grey permitted, no sitting on the fence or hedged bets. It's like this or it's like that. Our culture has a surface flat, and we strive for perfection when perfection is artificial. And what we have is never good enough, because what if it was? What if it was okay to be happy with what we had, and it was okay to make mistakes, or not to know, and people were happy with that? Something would happen, something to be scared of, something bad. Or so we're told by faceless voices of conscience, conjured from a culture that strives for growth and leaders and winners. And although there is bugger all room at the top, if we keep pushing and shoving and fighting to get there, those at the top will get pushed higher. So they tell us, keep pushing. My cheeky dissenting soul, mischievous, so alive, dances with you away from the heap and the bustle and the noise, into the open space of uncertainty, the liberation of indecision, into the tumultuous excitement of possibilities, unfurling like flowers with their scent of real life. And nothing bad happens when we say what we feel. Nothing bad happens when we say what shouldn't be said. Nothing bad happens except we see each other as we are, slightly confused. That's okay. Humans, that's all right. Uncertain, that's fine. Understanding, no problem. Nothing bad happens except the pile starts to collapse behind us.
Woo! Hey, like that one.
Right, will that do?
Oh yeah, you want another one?
Oh yeah, I'm going to give you another one. All
They're
right.
philosophical and charming.
I'll tell you one about penguins. I'm a little penguin chick. I'm waiting for my mum. She's been out at sea all day. I'm feeling pretty glum. I know that she will feed me well, but what an awful dish. Because what do I look forward to? Regurgitated fish. Other birds have fresher food. Their babies have a view. I live in a burrow and it smells of penguin poo. I shouldn't moan about my life, although it's only new. But what do I eat every night? It's penguin parents' spew. But parents are both very brave. They swim with seal and shark and make their way through crashing waves to feed me after dark. They clamber over jagged rock, crawl over log and stick, and they fill my hungry belly with a load of penguin sick. They can't fly like other birds as they cross rocks and beaches where dogs and cats and four-wheel drives are often normal features. So please don't take flash photos or shout and raise your voices. Binoculars and silence are far much better choices. Sometimes my folks bring other things to me I can't digest, and they feed me bits of plastic. I'm really unimpressed. By the time that it's gone down my throat, there's not much I can do, so recycling your plastic means healthy penguin spew. And though I eat their vomit till I get filled up like stuffing, I have to say it's better by miles than eating nothing. Until I'm old enough to fish, it's what I have to do, so I guess I'm pretty lucky to eat penguin parent spew.
Great.
Yeah. Woo. Okay.
Penguin parent spew. Beautiful. Just the thing I feel like for dinner. Yeah. There's lots of nice protein in that. Now, it's so odd that you were here because just today, No, actually, I was looking at a website where you can sell your stool.
Really?
Yeah, in America, it's the Human Microbiome Project, and they're going around getting people like from all around the world. They're looking for really, really healthy people, under 30 who don't, are fit and healthy, eat well, don't get sick, too. And they're paying $500 for a turn.
Somebody offered me $20,000 for mine. I kid you not.
Wow.
I couldn't take it.
Wow. So what'd you just put it back up? No, sorry, you don't need that one. Put it back up. Mr. Hanky.
The logistics were very difficult.
Yeah.
He ended up getting it from his girlfriend. Claimed it cured him within half an hour, but
Wow.
it certainly didn't. This guy's got
Okay.
issues, unfortunately.
Yeah, I've been actually studying it over the last 3 or 4 weeks, eating a lot more kimchi, yogurt, anything that's fermented, more greens, because you need the prebiotics as well as the probiotics, because you've got to feed the biome. And so much serotonin is produced in the gut, 95% of it or so, and it's our major neurotransmitter. One of the things is that psilocybin attaches to the serotonin receptors in the body, so it acts as a neurotransmitter, which then allows that reset of the neurons, a different kind of mechanism, but it actually works through the neurons throughout the body. But yeah, the whole gut is a thinking organism in its own self, and it controls what we feel like eating. Drinking long life milk, eating long life noodles. He died very young. That's all.
I thought you were looking at me.
No. Long life. He died very young.
Just engaging with the audience. It was the dolphins got me.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to ask Ashley to come up in a moment.
Yes,
This was one I wrote to myself. Message to self. Stop being attached to an outcome. Go forward to something else. Stop doing what doesn't serve. Start being a better version of self. Stop drifting from day to day. Begin and complete a plan. Stop being distracted. Stay focused. Be a conscious, self-directed man. The end. Ashley, welcome.
Well, I don't want to be too long. Getting to the point here, we don't want a political rally with mad leaders appearing at the moment when you're about to be distended. You suddenly saviours arrives. How much of that study I've done in my life. Been watching lots of little YouTubes about Adolf lately, and well, Hitler spoke for himself, didn't he? Once again, may I appear with 3 rulers to measure the measureless? Hypothesis. I thought I'd come with one today and say hypothesis. That is that you'd think, well, where are implication and perimeter gone to? On holiday, the whole bloody lot. Hypothesis, implication and perimeter. Oh, they're lovely. Well, what have I been reading? I sat in the park in divine Gyra and had the soft but coolish wind of close to mid-February come through the windows of my little bubble white Getz that still keeps going after 20 years, reading Machiavelli's Prince. Well, that seems to connect to Herr Hitler, I think, but to all human travail and struggle. It is interesting that the food industry is putting even more effort into long life milk and long life noodles. Part of the problem of 8 billion of us to be fed or not to be fed, that's better than Hamlet, isn't it? To feed or not to feed, that is the empty belly. To cope, we're going to have to develop many more forms of long life, stabilised food products for many, many reasons, so that the reality finally is that if you don't have any long life milk or any long life noodles or any other form of food, you're sure going to be dead quick. So that's what the scientists are at, I gather. I'll do 2 or 3 things. James's friend sent him a copy of Sometime Gladness, and interestingly I was going to read my poem about dear old Bruce Daw tonight, and there it was on the desk. I'll take it home with me and digest some of his fascinating work. I'm always intrigued. Bruce Daw met people's hearts and consciousness, and he spoke in a lyrical but somewhat flat sort of way. Perhaps that's very Australian. Bring on commodified long life meat pies. I called this incandescence, but I realised that Bruce had an X-ray presence that was more phosphorescent, actually, for Bruce Daw. Bruce, we are bringing you home, those workmanlike settings of words. We're bringing the choppers from the many uncivil wars across to the stilled ways, where the eye for ethics you eyed weighs and measures all fates, not least your own. Bruce, you're resting at the crossways, where the prams roll on and the hawthorn, St Kilda's cheer gear baptises baby and his family in their tribal song. Bruce, you will, you were, you are, always at home, casting your eye across the veggie patch. Fresh weeding gives us hope. Hope is weeding. Do a coffee for friends, quickening walks beneath autumn trees. Do a pile of student essays and do a poem just after and before the wild exuberance from echoing songs. He was a wonderful fellow, Bruce. He did not like Paul Keating. Now, the next thing I was going to do is a poem that I wrote last night and changed this afternoon while I was sitting in the white bubble thinking about fate, which probably sent me over to this fellow whose basic message is that fate is coming upon us like a flood and we better be quick with our pick and shovel to be building the flood walls and levees, because the flood is inevitable. I will make a slight frame for this. In 1917 there was such a heavy snowfall that the train had to be stopped at Walker, and at Walker Road, and news sent on up the line that went to Wallangarra in 1917 and took, I suppose, most of the people on that train down to the river port of Brisbane, because that's basically what it was, a river port that Toowoomba had as a point of entry and exit for its trade. So, in 1917 at Walker Road, boots crunched the scatching crystals under, taxis and horse-drawn into town. The journey north held up tonight for thick fall snow. Mastodon, like the rail engine, sits out the night out there. Drawing past the white granite settlements, travel beds soon usher dreams to smooth out day's distress. At Roma Street, telegrams bring out the worried relics. You're late, a general sigh. and safe and sound. Sydney Morning Herald headlines binned that last night signalled to the Walker stars and winds. From a traveller's valise dropped at the hasty step, and now she takes from it correspondences, kids' birthday cards, letters raging, caging to tell what can't be told in 17. The hotel walls will find a letter, no address. She left a blob of blue ink up on the upper edge last night. As cattlemen adjust their harnesses down on tomorrow's street, the hotel staff will slide it to the fire. Mum, you're late at Roma Street. Held by heavy snow, Dad says, on the way to Manly. She recalls that great rise of granite under her pillow's interrupted journey. I'll finish with a poem I've read previously, and it's certainly not politically correct, but what is in the flow of things, according to the writer of The Prince. For the Wry Ironic Poets by Geoffrey Dutton. When I finished reading this to go through tonight, because it goes through me, as I was born near the harbour, and I've known every nuance of this poem in some strange way in my marrow. I thought that really it's very close to the ambience of Jonathan Swift and some of the things I've read over the last year by Geoffrey Dutton, poems about his family and his grandmother, done in rhyming couplets. Very marvellous. So you're running, Gladys, are you in the race? That reminds me of reading at Galway races till I'm almost hypnotised by them. I'm quite obsessed this week by horse racing because every morning I wake up and I go through at Galway races 3 or 4 times in my memory, now that I've got it like a verbal icon in my mind. And it reminded me of Gladys then suddenly rushing up with an electronic ring to go out on the competitive hunt of life. Well, I'm rambling today, so on with the poem, and I shall wave goodbye with my 3 trusty friends: hypothesis, implication, and parameter. Or you could have hit, hypothesis, implication, and test if you like. So here it is for the Wry Ironic Poets. One soft waved summer's evening, all the wry ironic poets hired a ferry to take them, chugging, singing sotto voce round the harbour. Their wives came for the party, with all their hives of children of all ages clutching baskets of Heinz baby foods, tins red and black, blue, their lives kept only by white rails from black water. The children clung to their mother's hairy trousers, but one irresponsible poet forgot his quatrains and brought a mistress, the wine-dark daughter of a half-caste buffalo, who like a jet or diesel trains ran rings round the wives with wingtips flashing. Red, green in the wave, bright, dark. All the wry, ironic poets felt a tight rhyme stirring, stark in their bowels, while the red Ned beat in their heads like the ferry screws dead ahead, as they chewed continental bread and pasta clogged with garlic, while the ferry circled the harbour, always inside the heads, out of reach of the whitening surf and the darkening shore. The poet, whose mistress she was, quite startled them all by reciting, "She walks in beauty," a vulgar lyric by a vulgar poet with too much money and too many women. Someone had brought Women in Love, as it was a moonlit night, but certainly not for reciting, and the noise of so many spoons in Heinz baby food tins rattled the great tradition. But she kept on swirling amongst them, as if she had a mission to clap honey on thighs like a peony engulfing a bee. The visiting English poet fondled his bicycle clips. The American ran his nails to his crew cut, and the Australians tightened grips on copies of Me Engine. But being wryly aware of the limitations of love, of hair in the comb, sanitary and babies' napkins, indigestion after fries, and after chocolate bad skins, they ironically consigned the irresponsible poet and his irresponsible mistress to a fate like Shelley's. Uncommitted to passion, politics or lost causes, as indifferent to beer, football and the last furlong as to wipe-offs, white lipstick or a Mini Cooper's 060. They still glanced at the poet and his wine-dark mistress. Oh, what is going to happen? That's me in brackets out there somewhere, looking at the disturbing harbour. Oh, they glanced at the poet and his wine-dark mistress, who were undoubtedly limbering up for some untidy mixture of romantic imagery, free verse, and subsequent distress. But the poet went below to the gents, and she sat on the rail while the ferry marked the moonlight of the harbour, when suddenly, as they crossed inside the heads, the great amorous ocean reached out to the girl, drinking claret on the rail, and two mighty swells rocked the indignant ferry, and she toppled backwards, her skirts in flower, so the wry, ironic poet saw all the honey their dry thighs had ached for. None of them dived after her, having just enough money to support wife, house, car, and children, and having long ago thrown overboard every stray passion, they laughed as her epitaph rhymed ocean and motion, and when the irresponsible poet, zipping up his fly, came on to deck and missed her and asked why, they told him that the ocean is a wet place to die. Very dry poem. Hopefully one day someone will clutch some of the videos or books that come out of Poets Hall of Fame. Maestro Warren's imprimatur, and as those luckless intellectuals did Me Engine 40 years ago. 50 actually.
Thank you, Ashley. Wonderful. Well, I guess in a moment I might get Saul. Saul's put his hand up. Wow, that's cool. This was one of the books that Chrissy from Ballarat sent us. Ross Gibson, Stone Grown Cold. Published by Cordite Books, I think, from memory. Yep, Cordite Books, Melbourne 2015. He's published a couple of books of criticism and 4 other books of prose. These are just sort of like one-liners. There's about 100 and something of these, but they're called incident reports, and I'm not going to read them all out. 1. The sun ferries ozone in from the ocean. A day spent near the harbour plots a myth about radiance. The night creates music with fog, horns, and pilot bells. 2. See how an object can take the shape of a scream. Under 3. Understand that vim will ebb in a warm sluice. 4. Accept that heat is just a brief sigh made by cold. The job has been changing the shape of your face. These are incident reports. 6. A young constable has been threatening to colour the air. 7. Soon a dog will become famous here for howling a hymn. 8. I need the radio to bring me news from an untroubled planet. Alright, I'm going to leave that one there. And on that, I'm going to go on to a little quick one that I wrote here, if I can find it because I just lost it. This is pretty useless. As useful as nothing, not useful at all. Like a child's kindergarten scrawl on the wall, a mangled spoon crushed into a ball, the son of a giant who's short, not tall. A mute poet without paper, pen or phone. Like old Mother Hubbard when a dog needed a bone, a container of ice cream with no scoop, spoon, bowl or cone. The world would be fucked if we all lost our smartphone. A computer with no mouse or keyboard, work with no pay or no reward, as useful as tits on a bull or a ram, and dry toast without butter, Vegemite or jam. A railway track which has no trains, doctors would lose business if they cured people's pains. Sometime you've got to wonder if some humans have brains, and drinking artificial sweeteners leads to weight gains. Thank you very much. Saul, come on up.
Thank you very much, ladles and gentle spoons.
It's like thinking about useless shit.
Gabriel, last week I was inspired. I've written a fig. I've got a nice little fig here. Hang over. Well, I look hard to find it.
Can you explain what it is for our viewers?
Well, I'm going to. Well, sort of. I'm going to. I don't think I need to. Okay, so I'll start off with Fibonacci, it seems, found a way to count the world. A series of numbers spiral in upon itself until there is but one. 1 plus 1 makes 2. Plus 1, 3. 3 and 2 makes 5. Then add 5 and 3 to make 8. Just add the last two numbers. Fibonacci spiral. And that's just what it is. Okay, now the other place I was sort of inspired was this thing on poems or prose.
Verse is worse.
Well, there we go. So I sort of had a little bit of a look around. This is one I sort of found on a few years ago that Edward Estlin Cummings, an American poet, was pretty avant-garde and did a lot of sort of things, you know, rarely used a capital letter or, you know, he used punctuation in things and put words against words to sort of create the rhythm of things, you know. And this is one, it has very little, but you will find that at the very end we get ourselves a rhyme. So, there we go. So I'm going to read a couple of his because one just tickled my fancy big time, so I have to put it. And then I wrote another one of my own this week, so I'll do that. Somewhere I have never travelled, gladly beyond any experience, your eyes have their silence. In your most fragile gesture are things which enclose me, or which I cannot touch because they are too near. Your slightest look easily will unclose me, though I have closed myself as fingers. You always, petal by petal, myself as spring opens, touching skillfully, mysteriously, her first rose. Or if your wish be to close me, I and my life will shut very beautifully, suddenly, as when the heart of this flower imagines the snow carefully, everywhere descending. Nothing which we are to perceive in this world equals the power of your intense fragility, whose texture compels me with the colours of its countries, rendering death and forever with each breathing. I do not know what it is about you that closes and opens. Only something in me understands. The voice of your eyes is deeper than all roses. Nobody, not even the rain, has such small hands. And I found that one pretty intriguing.
Just so that was E. Cummings?
Yeah, Edwin Estlin.
Yeah, that's one of his
American
most
sort of avant-garde sort of some Borderland or avant-garde sort of poems. As I say, nearly all his poems, the name is their first line. That's sort of it. Now, this one, I just really like this one because when I was looking around and stuff, and this is one of his also, but I thought it was pretty quaint and pretty apt about the human condition in so many ways. It's called Anyone Lived in a Pretty How Town. Anyone lived in a pretty how town, with up so floating many bells down, spring, summer, autumn, winter. He sang his didn't, he danced his did. Women and men, both little and small, cared for anyone, not at all. They sowed their isn't and they reaped their same. Sun, moon, stars, rain. Children guessed, but only a few, and down they forgot as up they grew. Autumn, winter, spring, summer, that no one loved him more by more. When by now, and tree by leaf, she laughed his joy, she cried his grief. Bird by snow and stir by still, anyone's any was all to her. Someone's married, they're everyone's, laughed their cryings and did their dance. Sleep, wake, hope, and then they said their nevers, they slept their dream. Stars, rain, sun, moon, and only the snow can begin to explain how children are apt to forget to remember, with up so floating many bells down. One day, anyone died, I guess, and no one stooped to kiss his face. Busy folk buried them, side by side, little by little and was by was. All by all and deep by deep, and more by more they dreamed their sleep. No one and anyone, birth by April, wish by spirit, and if by yes. Women and men, both dawn and dim, summer, autumn, winter, spring, reaped their sowing and went their cane. Sun, moon, stars, rain. I just really like its thing. It's pretty good sort of a thing in there.
You're into spirals tonight.
That's it. Woo! And
Marching along.
yeah, this is one I wrote with the full moon, and it's sort of I was saying it's I'm not sure if it's a metaphor of like the moon and the tide about love, or whether it's about love and the moon and the tide. But I'll read it. Resist the urge, think I. I can maintain a sense of equilibrium, as maybe a sea locked in by the rigid land around, and no swelling of the tide be found beneath the attraction of the moon. But broad and deep it seems I am, not unlike the ocean, bound to earth, no escaping, but the moon, whether blind or blazing, unseen or full or profile gazing, has my attraction unfathomed, drawn from deep below. Smiling surface that greets the shore of all who come to play and work and while away, betrays me by my rise and fall each day. As my want of wants reaches for the unreachable, and my heart is held firmly in your grasp so simply, I am but the ocean, you the beautiful moon. In silence we dance in sympathy. Thank you.
Yeah, I need to pull it more. Now you got some for us, Gladys?
James, I might read the gum tree. That's the one that launched me into the thing over in Western Australia. I won a competition over there.
All right. Well, congratulations. Have you got it with you?
No, I haven't, James.
Okay. Well, if you want to, it should be just over there. I'll read. And while you're doing that, I'll read this one. And if it's not there, it's probably in the other room down there. But otherwise, I'll find it for you. I'm sure it's around somewhere. I think it might be in the other room down that way. Anyway, politicians. This was inspired by a politician who is not actually a politician, but he was aspiring to be a politician, who put a meme up, and it had a pair of, what do you call those, like jeans, or like R.M. William jeans, and boots, chambray boots. I don't know, yeah, look, kind of like that. And it was something like, it was just something derogatory, saying, oh yeah, they must be all young liberals or something, because it was a Greens putting up there. And I just couldn't help but think, like, how on earth is that constructive? I find it strange how politicians disrespect those with different opinions, judge looks, character, and poke fun without engaging a single one. The arrogance of political intellectuals renders their arguments ineffectual when they are snide and awry. They can't hide their true inside. When you hear a politician diss them, you can be certain that they don't listen and that they want to impose on everyone what they suppose. It's a parliament, not Ramsay's kitchen. The best outcomes don't come from bitching just cause separation. The best outcomes come from collaboration. I find it strange how politicians judge other politicians and sling mud, putting on a childish shit show, trading insults blow for blow. I find it strange. All right, Gladys, welcome.
Hey, Gladys.
Welcome back after like a month of being away. Oh, hang on.
Now I'm fine. Well, firstly tonight, my heart feels a bit heavy because I have my twin sister going through cancer treatment next week in Brisbane. She has a malignant tumour. And I'm hoping that everything will go fine. But it's certainly been a bit of a worry. She's been very well, but anyway, the tumour is there, and hopefully that they're going to get everything fixed up for her. So I thank you all anyhow.
For sure.
So I hope everything will be well. Yeah. But I've got the gum tree here tonight. This one I wrote when James first come here, and it's launched me into a competition over in Western Australia, and it was favourite, I think, out of about a half a dozen. But this is a gum tree's lament. I am a precious old gum tree. I've stood here for more than 100 years or so, and faced all kinds of weather, with wind, rain and snow. I once felt quite at home on this land where I still dwell, but please take a moment of your time. My sad story I will tell. As you know, many trees were all around me, but sadly they are gone. Their stumps still surround me, where once they all proudly stood upon. As I stand alone in the moonlight, with my leaves all a silvery glow, and dream of the days when I was a young gum tree, all those years ago. Back then, I stood so proud and tall, and was a treasure to behold. But the sound of chainsaws now just makes my sap run cold. You may think of me as no longer useful, and my days nearly done, but I've sheltered you many times from the blazing sun. I give refuge to the weary stock as they rest beneath me every night, and flocks of birds now nestle on my branches after their morning flight. But I beg of you, my good friend, just bear me a little thought, as you glance at my ragged old body, where many battles have been fought. Of course, I'm not what I used to be, but surely I can trust that you will not cut me down and turn me into sawdust. As my roots all start to tremble now with weeping branches hanging low, and still I dread to think of that terrible day when I may have to go. As I wake up each morning and thankfully take another breath, I pray that you will leave me here just to die a natural death. Now looking to my future, whatever that may be, but I always will remain a precious old gum tree. I just hope everything is all right. It's lovely to be back tonight and back with James and all the crew again, so it is really wonderful. But anyhow, I just hope that everything goes well because my twin sister is very close to me, and I just hope and pray nothing happens. But she's in good hands, so that's the main thing. Thank you, guys.
It'll be great, mate, no problem.
All right, I'll get Gabriel up in a moment. And anger. This one's about anger. So anger's one of those things which I've just lost. No, I haven't. Anger's one of those things that people fall into when the world doesn't go to the way that they think it should be. So it's a result of frustration. Ain't no situation that justifies a freak out. Nothing will change if you scream and shout except the way that people view you. Do you flex, flow and smile, or vilely spew? Rant, rave, react and attempt to direct, or let go of ego and humbly accept. In death and in life, trouble and strife, respect your children, husband and wife. There's no need for anger nor to demand, but humbly respect, listen to understand. You won't change the world if you shout. Creative solutions are found if you don't freak out. Nothing is perfect, nor can it be. You wouldn't yell at a tree, so why people or me? If you're thinking the world ought to change, is it not your ego that could rearrange? Does the outside world make you cry and pout? Nothing's going to change if you freak out. Wow, Gabriel, come on up. Welcome.
That's a good line, isn't it? Nothing's going to change if you
Freak out.
Just a few pop songs.
Good evening. First of all, best wishes and pray for Gladys' sister. Most of us will have had relatives with cancer. Anybody as old as me has had relatives who died of it. I've also got relatives who are going through various stages of treatment. I was going to read out something that I'm writing a series by way of exploring the frontiers of poetry called the Cancer Worry Tales. Going through the thing, but not yet, not now. Not entirely appropriate. And talking of not appropriate, in exploring the frontiers of things, remember last time I said that Carol Ann Duffy, the poet laureate, said there should be an equivalence between the form and content of a poem. So what I've got tonight are three, two of them mine, written this week, and one of them Les Murray's, written a long time ago, and that you already heard, but it's just so magnificent. Here's the first one. If anybody doesn't take offence at that, then you are probably an angel, and we should go to your feet. This is a sonnet of 14 lines, and it's called Swearing In, Swearing Out, and it's about changing fashions in swear words. Be warned. Right. Okay. Just wait. Respect what the commandment says. Don't take the name in vain. It was quite clear in former days which words would cause folk pain. Slowly word taboos transform. We wake to find one sunny morn new taboos that have been born. Once, ruddy, bloody, fuck, shit, cunt were words you must not utter. Now, nigger, wog, yid, good chink, mark you as from the gutter. I wonder, as we look ahead, if cancer, coronary, stroke and dead will be the swear words that we dread. That's what you come to expect. Cheerful stuff. So, now I read Les Murray's great poem called The Quality of Sprawl, which will be relevant to my last one. And you've heard it before, but you can't hear too much of this one. The quality of sprawl. Sprawl is the quality of the man who cut down his Rolls Royce into a farm utility truck. And sprawl is what the company lacked when it made repeated efforts to buy the vehicle back and repair its image. Sprawl is doing your farming by aeroplane, roughly, or driving a hitchhiker that extra 100 miles home. It's the rococo of being your own still centre. It is never lighting cigars with $10 notes. That's idiot ostentation and the murder of starving people. Nor can it be bought with the ash of $1 million deeds. Sprawl lengthens the legs. It trains greyhounds on liver and beer. Sprawl almost never says, why not? With palms comically raised, nor can it be dressed for, not even in running shoes worn with mink and a nose ring. That is society. That's style. Sprawl is more like the 13th banana in a dozen, or anyway, the 14th. Sprawl is Hank scampering, never give an inch, bisecting an obstructive official's desk with a chainsaw. Not harming the official. Sprawl is never brutal, though it's often intransigent. Sprawl is never Simon de Montfort at a town storming. Kill them all. God will know his own. Knowing the man's name, this was said to might be sprawl. Sprawl occurs in art, the 15th to the 21st lines in a sonnet, for example, and in certain paintings. I have sprawl enough to have forgotten which paintings. Turner's glorious burning of the Houses of Parliament comes to mind, a double-bannered triumph of sprawl, except he didn't fire them. Sprawl gets up the nose of many kinds of people, every kind that comes in kinds, whose futures don't include it. Some decry it as criminal presumption, silken-robed Pope Alexander, dividing the New World between Spain and Portugal, as he smiled in petto afterwards. Perhaps the thing did have sprawl. Sprawl is really classless, though. It's John Christopher Frederick Murray asleep in his neighbour's best bed in spurs and oilskins, but not having thrown up. Sprawl is never Callum, who, drunk along the hallways of our house, reinvented the festoon. Rather, it's Beatrice Miles going 1200 ditto in a taxi. No lewd advances, no hitting animals, no speeding on the proceeds of her two-bob sonnet, Shakespeare readings. An image of my country, and would that it were more so. No, sprawl is full gloss murals on a council house wall. Sprawl leans on things. It's loose-limbed in its mind. Reprimanded and dismissed, it listens with a grin and one boot up on the rail of possibility. It may have to leave the earth. Being roughly Christian, it scratches the other cheek and thinks it unlikely, though people have been shot for sprawl. Master indeed. And finally, my other one, which is an elegy, and try as I might, I haven't quite chopped it down to very mechanical, precise scanning and rhyming. It's on the way, but I want to try out the sentiment on you. This is called Jive's Elegy. Thanks, Jane Fonda, Jacko too, for giving us dance aerobics. What once was fun became hard work, like art reduced to comics. Ironic when Travolta went from Night Fever to Grease. Dance spontaneity spent, narcissism's release. But chief among the dance killers, a Cassius Clay blessed wrecker, a Samson pulling down Jive's pillars, check out fat, chubby checker. It should be on the poisons list, that ugly gross gyration, the so-called dance known as the twist, infected every nation. Watch any rock clip and reflect how teenagers found the speed, the strength, the genuflect, jive jumping over, under, round. No quasi-military drill, no gymnasium light, just fast and neat true rock and roll, made us like to dance all night. Step and twirl each boy and girl, sowing out their soul. Until they laid on us the twist which overcame our jive, jiving quit the dancing list, quite dead by 65.
Yeah.
It's crap to be a boomer baby and dream of nights long vanished, when to rock dance wells, well maybe, to make all sadness briefly banished.
Oh, thank you. I like that first one about swearing. It's sort of, it talks about this kind of slow, gradual paradigm shift of society. I studied a Bachelor of Science in Australian Environmental Studies in 1988 through 93, and I was born in early January 1970. I was a product of the Summer of Love. And so there was this kind of beginning of this sort of hippie Woodstick student consciousness movement of the 70s and stuff. And in my lifetime, I've seen an adoption, a general adoption of a more eco-conscious way of living. And you can see that, say, if you've been watching Landline for the last 30 years and the effect that that's had on the farming community in adopting regenerative farming and farming practices in Australia. But just in general, people are more eco-conscious overall these days, and that's a wonderful thing. This is called tie-dye. Gives me a lot of hope to see Guyra kids wearing tie-dye, that in my life the world has become much more hippified. There's been a global shift towards more love and more peace. There's less violence than ever before and more homegrown veggies. These days there's more recycling and much less pollution. For many of the past problems we've got technological solution, more personal responsibility because the world is more hippified. There's less judgment, more respect now. Kids wear tie-dye. Walking in the street, you'd be surprised who's a hippie, who meditates, does yoga, wears paisley, thinks trippy thoughts, composts their scraps and wears op-shop fashion. Reduce, reuse, recycle, both a motto and a passion. Yeah, you can be a hippie at home and on the inside prefer not to drive but walk, hitchhike or ride. Walking down the street, nobody would ever know until you wear your tie-dye t-shirt, the colour of a rainbow. Gives me a lot of hope to see the young wearing tie-dyed. Since the 1960s, the world's much more hippified. The last vestiges of darkness are finally losing their grip in this intergenerational hippie paradigm shift trip. It's wonderful to see, and it gives me a lot of hope that in my life I'll see the legalisation of mushrooms and dope. Eco-consciousness becomes the norm and even more hippified, but now I need not worry anymore. Now more kids wear tie-dyed. Have you got anything for something for Skye? Okay, come on up, Skye. We need to lower the mic. We might lower the mic. Okay.
Yeah, just like.
You don't need to too close.
Okay. Yearning for a kiss. Yearning, yearning, yearning for a kiss. A message far beyond the waters to put your mind at rest. To say your mind and no one else's, for moments felt in bliss. Yours forever longing and the holding of your ribs. Of daydreams caressing, of heavens reminiscing, tender words that calm the soul, and fun adventures waiting. But tainted is the pathway of contradictory courtings, as the heart is yet another's, sending kisses of devotion and sounds of good night wishes. And another one that I wrote a couple of years ago, Sweetheart. My sweetheart, your sweetheart, lay alone without you, here in her bed, awaiting you too. Whispers of sweetness flying through the air, of kissing your sweet lips, of rubbing your hair. Oh, what a delight to be wrapped in your arms and holding you tight until morning light.
Hello again. Oh, okay, we've got, that's just about it, except then we've also got, I'm going to invite Alex back up here in a moment, of course. Now, I started writing this one, and then I finished it, and then I started 2 more lines, which I then did later. I finished off the rest of this later, but I'm going to do the first one, and this is it's a crow. There once was a crow whose name was Willie. He landed on the road, but Willie wasn't silly. He started dancing on the road. It was a lovely day when a car flew along. Willie flew away. As he flew away, Willie sang a song. When cars come along, don't linger long. But it sounded like car, 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 car. What would you expect? He was a crow. Ha ha. Yeah, ha ha. Okay, and then I'll give you the first 2 lines of the next one. There once was an ibis whose name was Jim. Jim loved eating from the local rubbish bin. How could he not? Look, there's the ibis down there. But you've got to find out what happened to Jim. Now, just on a side note, back in Egyptian mythology, The Egyptian god Thoth, or Thoth, is represented by it's a man with an ibis head. And the Egyptian god Thoth was the god of poetry, of writing, of science and knowledge and that kind of stuff. And in his life, apparently he wrote over 40,000 poems, but then he's also attributed... Hey? I'm not too sure, but there's also been attributed to being Hermes Trismegistus, Hermes the thrice great in Greek mythology as well as that.
He's
So,
got the tarot together.
exactly, yeah, he got the tarot together, lots and lots of stuff, and yeah, when they lived for thousands of years allegedly. Anyway, but you'll hear the rest about the ibis's name was Jim Eat Rubbish from the local bin later on, after Alex comes on. Thank you, Alex.
So, I assume that some of you might have lived with somebody with long hair at some stage or another. This is an ode to my wife Jane. It's called Jane's Hair. I have a wife for whom I care. Her smile is big, her heart is fair, no finer woman anywhere, and she has quite a lot of hair. Her long hair hangs in wispy strands, it gets entangled in my hands and blows for miles around the lands I feel nobody understands. I love the hair upon her head, less so strands free on the bed. I know on many I have fed, as tons and tons of hair's been shed. It floats like gossamer on air, it's in the sink, it's on the chair. It's over here, it's over there. Her hair is fucking everywhere. Sometimes I just stand appalled. There's so much shed, she should be bald. The brandy vacuum cleaner's stalled, and the Lord's name again is called. The broom, upturned, reveals a nest of hair in knots my will to test. But still I know I have been blessed, and her love's a welcome guest. But once that hair has left her head, it somehow fills my heart with dread, and I wish that it would shrink instead of multiplying in the bed. It floats around just like a feather, becoming curly in wet weather, and though I've nearly reached my tether, our love will keep us both together. The poem that Gladys recited before, it sort of has a very similar flavour to one that I wrote back in 2012 called My Old Friend. A life of good works unacknowledged. My old friend stands out in the sun. She's withered and old and chilled by the cold. She's had a pretty good run. Most of the friends didn't make it. They stood straight and true, now they're gone. They were used without thought. They were sold, they were bought. But my crippled friend here still lives on. She was twisted and bent. She was ugly, a wallflower standing alone. She's still doing good works when the men of her youth are but memories, soil and bone. She's made homes for all sorts of creatures, pumped water all day and all night. She whispers old songs to those that will hear and brings those with heart great delight. I've looked after some of the children. They show so much promise in youth, and I only hope that they live to be old, but we can't know the future in truth. My old friend has lots of companions, and some love her far more than me, but I live in the hollows and rest in the shade of my old friend, the ironbark tree. I've got a lot of weird stuff in here. This one's called Ode to Body Hair. When I was a kid, I used to look at girly magazines. You used to actually see body hair.
Yeah.
It's not something you see very much anymore. If you have no hair down there, you're reading too much Marie Claire. The razor gangs have half your share. For self-respect, they have no care. They make you feel just like a bear if you should grow your hair elsewhere. And if, when wearing your swimwear, a pube should poke out anywhere, judgment shall be brought to bear. So at such rags I tend to glare and tip my hat to those that dare to be more hirsute than a pair. Of puberty to be aware. Whether redhead, dark or fair, I give no judgmental stare. If you're exposed to public glare, your underarm or pubic hair, I reckon that is your affair. Why the hell should others care? Leave it wild or shape it square. Any cover's getting rare. I fear this generation's hair won't have any anywhere. A shame felt when girls might compare their own front side of derriere, thick bush or natural growing there, to find their heroines are bare. We'll send them to depression's lair and leave them crying in a chair. So celebrate your pubic hair, grow it thick so you can share. Thick so you have enough to spare to make one merkin or a pair.
That's a good social comment.
Yeah.
If your mind's in the gutter.
Yeah, when I was like 6 years old, Miss June had a big bush, mate. She was hot when I was only 6. So, anyway, she did. Oh God, Miss June. I still remember it. I'm like 52, 53. That's right. Hey, Alex has published 2 books here. Faunaverse, Australian Wildlife in Poetry, and Faunaverse, Wildlife in Poetry, Tasmania. So I'll just show these to the camera.
See?
Thanks for the plug.
Hey, not at all, you're very welcome. Thanks for coming along tonight. It makes our life even more interesting than it already is. Yeah, and I've got a few books as well. Lust in Nimbin, I've got Poetry when Prohibition and Love in Nimbin as well. Now, this is a little short one. Militarism is a ridiculous waste of money. Invading and indiscriminately killing isn't funny. In order to take control of the resources of the poor, militarism is bullying using the fear of war.
Yeah.
That's it, simple as that. Some things you don't need to expand on too much. Right, okay, well look, this is, we're up to Jim the Bin Chicken. So yeah, I used to ride along South Bank there in Brisbane, going to work when I worked in the city in Queensland College of English, and I'd be coming home and there'd be these bin chickens always in the way. Now I'm here in Gyra, we've got them out here in the lagoon now, and we've got a few. We've actually got 2 kinds. We've got the straw-necked ibis and the sacred ibis here, and I believe that sometimes there's a 3rd one that comes here as well. And,
There's only 3 species.
there are 3, yeah. All right. So yeah, there once was an ibis whose name was Jim. Jim loved eating from the local rubbish bin, but he'd never eat KFC. It wasn't finger licking, didn't want to be a cannibal. Jim was a bin chicken. One day Jim was walking and found a Big Mac dropped in the sidewalk and swept into a crack. He took a big bite, a swallow and a chew, and in just 10 minutes began to projectile spew. Jim was an ibis who ate pizza with spots. He was once young and strong, then he was not so hot. But now he's fighting fit again. Jim has changed his ways, eating fish and insects from the lagoon these days. Stays away from South Bank, where the ibis are unfit, waddling and lazy, eating human shit. He's changed his name to Thoth. He's no longer Jim, Bin Chicken, the sloth. He's fighting fit and slim. That's it. And all right, well thank you everybody tonight who's poed and come up here. Alex Dudley and his wife Jane for sharing her hair with us, and your poo story, and that's actually quite important. It has become over the last few years accepted wisdom within mental health now. So yeah.
Red Cross has started still bank as well.
Oh, in Australia.
In Australia.
I bet they're not paying $500 like that mob in America.
Probably not.
No, they want me to donate it. There you go, I've just come to donate a stool. Yeah.
They probably don't want to make a gigantic profit out of.
No, well, they do need really, really healthy young people whose stomach biota, and they even prefer vaginal birth as opposed to caesarean too.
That makes a lot of sense.
It
There's
does.
a lot of jokes about the entertainment area being close to the sewage works, but that's very
Yeah.
good reason.
Yeah, and they also recommend breastfeeding for people that they want to use their fecal coliforms, whatever. All right, well, thank you very much. If you've liked tonight, give it a thumbs up, a subscribe, tell your friends about it. Bring a friend next week. And and thank you very much. We'll see you later. Yeah.